you to depend upon another race is the leadership that will exist. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find the leadership of our own.
Not your average nigga, I'm a god out the hood. They can't downplay me, I came up, I'm elevated. I ain't gotta say too much for them to know I'm coming for what's mine. You know they see me in my presence, say they see how I'm coming. Young, but you not just gonna finesse me like you did my peoples. And then back when you said they was emancipated. This ain't that. Your head too big, you feeling yourself. The game wasn't fair, you had the advantage, we wasn't educated. I don't look at you people the same. Nah. Your worst nightmare, my skin tone about them chains. Yeah. Not no circus lion, son, I can't be tamed. You gon' have to kill me, pussy, Toby ain't my name. Y'all still want us think our history started when we were slaves? What? Come on now, talk about them pyramids we made. I was chosen by that man, you know y'all just been running game. The nerve of you acting like...
Welcome, family. This is your brother, King Cam, and welcome to the Shifting the Culture podcast. Tonight, man, we have a special guest that's going to be joining us. I want to shout out to the Facebook family, the Twitter family, and the YouTube family that's going to be checking in. As always, I would like for you to make sure that you let me know what city and state that you're tuning in from. Let me know what city and state that you're checking in from tonight, because we definitely want to see who's in the building. Man, Shifting the Culture podcast, where we have these Shifting the Culture conversations. Tonight, we are going to be discussing the tech industry. And then for those of you who follow me on Twitter, we had a Twitter space about 2 hours ago, that started 2 hours ago, ended about an hour or so ago, in reference to breaking into the tech industry, not needing a college degree or having any type of experience to get in the door. And I thought that was an excellent space to kind of diving board or catapult us into this conversation tonight. Because we have, on this week of Shifting the Culture podcast, we have a special guest who's coming on to discuss how we actually get hired in tech. Now, you hear a lot of people talk about getting into the tech industry and, how all of the benefits and everything like that. But we're going to be giving you some tips and some tricks to actually get hired, because most people know that you come in, they get certified, but that doesn't guarantee that they get a job. People done DM me and told me they went and got this cert, but they still have not been able to lock in a job. So we're going to be talking about how you actually get hired in tech. If you watch my past broadcasts around tech, we've talked about ways to get in and the benefits, but now you're going to get to the real world tools, such as resume tips, interview tips, and how to look for a job. Our guest is a tech recruiting specialist, right, with a BA in political science and a doctoral in law. She is also an event planning expert, which she uses in her recruitment strategies. She has over 95,000 followers on LinkedIn. Please, family, as you coming in, I need for you to put your hands together virtually for my good sister Shanae, aka Recruiter Cousin. All right, need you to do that, family. Need you to do that. Bring my sister in. That's right. The hand claps. Recruiter Cousin in the house.
What's up with you?
Had to do it twice. I had to do it twice because, man, I'm so honored and privileged, because when I first got on LinkedIn, all I saw was Recruiter Cousin. I'm like, who is this? Then, I'm chopping it up with Cyrus and everything. He's like, yeah, I just got off this show with Recruiter Cousin. I'm here, Recruiter Cousin. I'm like, who? I just see this name all over the place, and then I see your face popping up everywhere. So I'm like, yo, sis is lit and legit. So, I am, again, just thankful to have you on the show today. Thank you, sis, for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Now, let me just let me check with the people and make sure the audio is right and tight. Let me see. Okay,
right?
okay, I'm good to go. And look, man, we got Vegas in the building. We got who else we got in the building? We got
Hey,
Jersey.
Montclair, I see
You see
Jersey.
Montclair in the building? Okay. We,
Jersey.
we got Washington. We got Lake Stevens, Washington in the building. Hey, we got the West Coast in here heavy right now. We got Denver, Colorado tapped in. North Carolina, that's my brother Nathan. He always showed love to shifting the culture. So, man, that's definitely dope, man. Oh, man, somebody said sent you a request connect on LinkedIn. Oh, look,
Yeah,
say,
it's funny.
look.
It's funny when people do that. People be like, they'll put it in the comments. Shanae, I sent you a message, just let you know. And I'm
Yo.
like, y'all, just give me some grace. It's only me. Just
Right.
give me some.
Exactly. So she'll be getting to you. Family. Bronx stand up. The boogie down is in the building. Okay, so they said that the sound is good. Just wanted to make sure the sound was great. Everybody could hear you, Sister Shanae. So, oh man, this is so dope. It's really difficult for where I want to start, but let's go ahead and just start with your journey into the tech space. I think that's important. That's a good way to lay the foundation. How did you actually get into tech?
What's interesting about it is I didn't seek out tech. If anything, I didn't even think about working in tech. It was just, I always knew I wanted to be an attorney. When I didn't pass the bar, I took the bar 3 times and didn't pass it. And I say it all the time because it's genuinely nothing to be ashamed about. Took the bar and I was just like, yeah, I'm not taking this no more. Like, I'm not giving North Carolina any more of my money. We're going to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so that decision, from the time I graduated law school to then making that decision to then landing my first full-time role as a recruiter, was a 4-year process. And so when people say, oh, I've been looking for a year, or I've been looking for 6 months, or I've been looking for 3 months and I ain't got no hits, and I'm like, try 4 years. and then we can have a conversation. Not saying that any other person's journey is any less strenuous or more strenuous than the other, but I say that in a way where I relate to people, because I understand what that waiting process feels like, and I understand how it feels when you need that yes, and all you get is rejections. So transitioning from law school and making the decision to pivot, I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do, because in law school, we're not taught how to do or be something else outside practicing attorneys. We're trained to actually be in a courtroom or to actually be an attorney. I had to figure out what were the other things that I can do with my law degree where I did not feel like my law degree was going to go in vain. So I was working at a contract role for a few companies, and the position is called doc review. And so doc review is pretty much, you sit at a computer and you go through documents all day long and get them ready for discovery and what's relevant documents and what's not, and all of that. And so in my mind, you don't think about, when you're on the computer, all that is tech. So didn't think about that, not one bit. So that was easy money. We got paid every Friday. But after a while, it stopped being fulfilling because I'm too ambitious for my own good. And so I was like, okay, how do I transition, or what do I do next? And so my husband, who was working for Duke Health at the time, he was like, babe, have you ever heard of Duke Temporary Service? And I was like, no. And so my husband is actually the reason why I was able to get into the position that I was in. So shout out to the spouse, because
shout out to the husband. Shout out to the husband now.
My husband Terrence was very instrumental in not just the support part, but telling me to, like, dog, calm down. Like, he was like, calm down. Timing is everything. You'll get a job when you get a job. So he sent my resume over to someone, like old school, passed my resume over to somebody else, who I eventually landed in front of the person who was leaving maybe the day after. He called me the day before his last day, and he said, I'm gonna pass your resume one more time to the person who recruits for temporary roles. So I was like, cool. So he put me in contact with somebody named Renee McAllister. Renee is, I don't say Renee's name enough, so that's why I'm saying her name now.
Right.
So he put me in contact with Renee, who then put me into a position with Duke's Law School. And it was perfect because I had a law degree. What I didn't know was the position was a secretary. So when I walked in, I said to myself, Shanae, you are not above working as a secretary. You need money. You need to pay your bills. And I literally was sitting at the desk fighting back tears because I kept saying, Shanae, put your pride aside. You are not above this job. And I said it to myself all day long until I actually believed it. And then after 6 weeks of working in that role, I was able to then transition over to where I became a recruiter. So I interviewed for a position where it was a recruiting and compliance officer role. And my job was to discard all of the old resumes that the company was keeping that were more than 3 years old, because at that point it became a liability. And they felt like I was perfect because I had the law degree. So I knew what to look for to then discard all of the old resumes. And I even found like resumes that have resume paper, which I'm dating people with resume paper.
Dang.
So my boss at the time, she comes to me just randomly and was like, do you want to learn how to recruit? And I was like, yep, I don't got nothing else to do. And that was literally like my answer, like, yep, sure, why not? And so later, after she trained me, later she said, Shanae, I knew you would love this profession because I see how hard you had it. And I see that by the time I had gotten to her, I was so frustrated and so over it that there were times where she would be talking to me, explaining stuff to me, and I would be in tears, and she would stop and she would go cry, come back when you're ready. And every time I had my moment, she would stop and say, go cry, go take a walk, and come back when you're ready. And she would always say, even though we're at work, I'm not going to take away the fact that you're frustrated. So I want you to be frustrated, and I want you to cry. When you're done, come back, and we're going to keep working. And so that helped me network internally, which then helped me transition from higher education recruiting into healthcare recruiting. And then got an email from LinkedIn that saying that my current company was looking for recruiters. And that's how I pivoted into big tech.
Wow. So shout out to the journey. Man, you know, this is honestly what I try to tell people when they see people accomplishing, right? And they see people reaching heights of success, but people don't really see the backstory. People don't really see the crying. People don't see the long nights, the staying up late, the falling asleep at the computer, whatever it is that you was doing, grinding before you was able to achieve some level of success. People don't see that. So when they see, Recruiter Cousin got 95,000 followers on LinkedIn, they haven't seen the work that went behind all of that to be able to build up a following and a brand like that. You know, when they see other people getting the success, man, it's a story behind everybody's success. And one of the things that I hear a lot of people say is that failure is a part of the journey. So failing, right? Failing at what you wanted to achieve at the time the most, which was becoming a lawyer and passing the bar, you failed at that. And most people would have thought, man, I'm a failure in life. I'm not going to be able to, go to the places that I want to go to in life and stuff like that. But you pivoted and you didn't let that keep you down. And now look at where you at. So I think it's dope. So just shout out to the story. I think that's extremely important.
I mean, my mom has this philosophy that she taught me throughout my life. She used to always say, and still to this day, she says, Shanae, we don't fail, we fix it.
That's right.
She just said, fix it.
I like that.
And I fix it, and I fixed it.
I like that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I kind of have the same mentality. Anytime I stomp my toe or fail at something, I don't really allow myself to get depressed or to, really fall down and waddle in it, maybe for a day, something like that. But my mind is always, okay, how do we fix it? How do we pivot? What's the next thing? How do we overcome it? What can we do? Right? It's not about what I can't do, is what can I do to make it happen? What can I do to change it? So that's kind of, how my mindset works. So now, being in the tech space, being in the tech role, did you already have the following on LinkedIn prior to you getting the role at your company now? Or were you building that during your time working with resumes? Like how did you go about starting to build the brand?
Yeah, so I already had a good following because I'm a spoken word artist, and so I'm an author of 3 books. So my community knew me as a spoken word artist and motivational speaker. What I did was I took spoken word and motivational speaking, and I combined that with recruiting, because I do do a lot of motivational speaking to my candidates and whoever decides to come into my DM or if they need just some advice. So what I do is I combined all of them and then I rebranded myself. So that's how I was able to build my following on LinkedIn, and then being able to just be a little bit more consistent on LinkedIn and talk about a lot of things that people are afraid to discuss or even mention. So like I would say stuff that was really relatable to the Black community, but it was almost like it was unheard of to be able to say at work. So I would just say it just to test the limit. So I would say stuff like, y'all do know that kinks, haircuts, twists, braids, locks, all that is still professional. And people be like they would resonate with that. Or I would say stuff like, I'm a Black girl from Camden, New Jersey, which is a Black neighborhood. I went to 2 Black schools. I'm a part of a Black sorority, and I work in tech.
Wow.
So I would just say stuff that I think is meaningful to my community that people could connect with. And then what I started doing to build my following was I started to spend a lot of my personal time answering my DMs, number one, and answering candidate questions using my posts, where if a candidate is getting ghosted, or if a candidate doesn't know how to prepare for an interview, or if a candidate, whatever, what I would do is I would use my post to answer the question from another post. And so then that started to resonate with people. But most of it had a lot to do with, I would be up 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night on my phone answering DMs one by one. And my husband was fine with it because he was just like, this is something you love to do and that you can tell it brings you joy. So he didn't care. He was just like, do your thing. I'll be here when you're done. Right. So it was more of like, that's what I started to do. And that's how I started to build my network. But then I also wanted people to feel comfortable with them being themselves. So I just started to just say, this is literally how I show up at work. I talk how I talk. I speak how I speak. I'm silly. And that's who I am. So I don't subscribe to having work Shanae and home Shanae. I am Shanae, whatever capacity that is. And part of that is because it's too exhausting to have to figure out who I am at home and who I am at work. And it brings me anxiety not being able to be myself. So my husband taught me to be so comfortable. And of course, God, literally not in that order, of course, God and my husband taught me to be so comfortable in myself that I'm now uncomfortable not being myself. And so that's just how I built my following. And I've enjoyed being able to connect with people from a pure place.
Yes, ma'am. And you spoke on two very, very pregnant points that I wanted to kind of open up a little bit. And that's about, being yourself. And I've been in a couple of different communities, and a lot of my work deals with self-improvement. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says that the basis for self-improvement, the basis for community development is self-improvement, right? Self-improvement is the basis for community development. So with that being said, really, really honing in on who you are as a person, knowing what you like, what you don't like, and being extremely comfortable in yourself is something very important, and that a lot of people actually lack. People who are in their 50s and 60s dealing with trauma from their childhood that hasn't allowed them to fully operate in who they really are. So you have a lot of people who go to work and are one way at work, and then they come home and they're completely, totally different. Or even with a certain set of friends, they act a certain type of way. And when they're with another set of friends, they act a certain type of way. So, being comfortable in who you are, I believe, resonates with people, because when people are alone by themselves, they want to be themselves, and they are themselves when they think nobody is looking. So, that resonates with people, because when they're alone, they can be themselves. And now you being one of other people I've seen now really getting into authenticity on social media is what really attracts a lot of people. And I try to, teach and be example of the same thing. Be authentic, be your authentic you, because what you seeing on social media most of the time is not authentic. And don't allow that stuff to put you in a state of depression or to think that you less than because you are not doing what you see them doing and things like that. So that was very important. And then I actually saw an interview of you where you talked exactly about that, about being yourself, about the way you wear your hair. You have your Shanae haircut, right? And you talked about speaking the way that you do and using slang, right? I don't switch up how I talk because I'm in an environment with corporate heads and all of that type of stuff. Like, I don't do that. I'm just going to be me, and you're going to like it or you're going to leave it alone. So
mine saying is either like it or lump it, but I'm gonna be me.
Yeah, there you go. You know what I mean? So I thought that was extremely valuable too, because a lot of people, again, are not able to do that. So could you talk about a little bit more on how does that resonate on the tech side? Because being black in tech, is something that's new to all of us that's black getting into tech, right? And we know that the field is dominated by, Caucasians and Asians and Indians and things like that. So it's not a lot of us that are there. So could you talk about, being black in tech and still being able to be authentic, working in these different environments?
Yeah. So I started with being able to do that in my interviews. So I literally, I said, I'm going to test this, because if they told me I could be myself, I'm going to test this. So I walked in my interview.
You one of them.
Like as hip hop as I could be. And every part of, because I'm animated, so every part of like my answers and how I told my stories, I was acting stuff out.
Right.
I was like moving around in my chair just to paint the picture so they can understand how passionate I am about my job. But then to also see, like, can I really be myself, or is this cat? Like,
right.
For real, can I actually like really, really be myself? And then it got to a point where when I got on the job, I called one of my hiring managers homie. And then I said, dude, and I literally was like, dude, and we were just having a conversation via Teams, and he didn't feel no type of way. And I was like, And so then it would be little things that I would do that was just like a Shanae thing to do. But then it's also a matter of it's being able to balance who you are from a free perspective, but then also being able to balance that with demanding a certain level of respect.
Right.
And so there's a way that where I am at work where I genuinely teach people how to treat me. Either you gonna come correct or you don't come at all. That's at home, that's at work, that's wherever I am. And so for me, it's whenever I'm partnering with somebody, it's sometimes I feel like my colleagues be talking to each other because they be like, hey, Shanae, just by the way, or I can tell like how they talk to me is different than how they may talk to somebody else. And part of that is just because I genuinely demand a certain level of respect because I'm going to give it to you. So I don't want you to ever feel like you're going to have the freedom that just because I am Black and I am woman and I may look young to you, that you can actually treat me or talk to me a certain kind of way. So I'm gonna prevent that on the front end. And so that's, to me, that's how I'm able to balance being myself, but also creating a level of trust with my colleagues so that they know Shanae, she likes to have fun, but she's really good at what she do. So it's a matter of being able to be who you are, but then deliver at the same time. So you have to have that delivery in your actual work in order to balance you being your authentic self.
Right. That makes sense. What's going on, family? This is your brother King Cam, host of the Shifting the Culture podcast. I'm here with recruiter cousin, and man, we are having a wonderful conversation on how you're able to get into tech. We're going to be talking about six-figure roles. We're talking about job tips. We're talking about interview tips and how you actually lock in those roles. So my sister's here sharing just a little bit of her precious time with us. So we're thankful to have her. What I need everybody to do is I need you to like, if you on Facebook and YouTube, I need you to like, share, and subscribe. Smash that like button, family. I need you to share the link out. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the more people in the room. We want to get some more people in here tapped in because this conversation is extremely valuable. And I just want to do some shout outs as well to a couple of people that's in the chat. We got EJ Butler in from Philadelphia checking in. Mr. Feathers from the Bronx, Boogie Down, stand up. We have Optimizer in the building. That's Vegas all day. You know, we got Miss Brown. Shout out to Miss Brown. Elisa Saldana. I hope I pronounced that right. Elisa Saldana in the building. We got my brother Rick Alim Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, family. Brother Nathan, always supporting the channel, tapping in. Who else did I miss? We got Tay, the godmother, my sister Tay. Appreciate you, sis, for coming through, tapping in, Sister Tasia. Who else? Lovely Bex just came through. So shout out, please. Like I said, share the link. Let's get some more people in here. What's up, Tasia? I've been telling you, you need to come and tap into this tech right now. Sister Shanae right here, she gonna give us all the answers that we need to go ahead and successfully lock in those 6-figure roles. So, yes, ma'am. So, being authentic at work, which is something that a lot of people are getting used to. Another thing people are getting used to when it comes to breaking into tech is negotiating that bag, right? Negotiating that salary, negotiating that bag. So, can you talk about how Recruiter Cousin is negotiating the bag and help other people negotiate the bag on their roles?
Here's the thing. What's interesting about the way I teach people how to negotiate their salary is I did not negotiate mine. And the reason why I didn't negotiate mine, I didn't negotiate mine. I didn't negotiate mine because there was too much goodness inside of the offer that I didn't feel like I had to. So for me, it was, so this is how my application process went. I applied on a Wednesday night. Thursday at 3:00, the recruiter reached out to me. By Tuesday the following week, I had a phone screen. Within 2 weeks, I had interviews. Within a week and a half, I had an offer. It happened entirely too seamless. So then by the time I got to the offer and I said what my salary expectation was, my offer the offer exceeded my salary expectation by $15,000. And then my total comp doubled my salary from healthcare. Actually more than double salary. So I didn't need to, I was just like, oh.
Right. I was straight.
So
you were straight.
I was good. So like my total comp, if I put a number to it, my total comp probably hit me at plus $60,000 coming from healthcare. So I didn't feel like I needed to negotiate anything.
Right.
But I started to learn quickly in my own research. I started to learn the difference in the classes of people who negotiate and who don't. I started to pay attention to what's your salary expectation, and then a certain class of people giving salary expectations. And then I started to see Black people going, oh, I want 65. Then I saw another, and I started to get to a point where I could guess if I was screening a Black person, I could guess the possibility of them going under $80,000.
Wow.
And I started to go, so it was at a point where I started to pay attention, and I was like, this person will say under $90,000. This person's going to say under $80,000. And sure enough, they would say either right under it, or they would target what I would be thinking in my head. And so I started wanting to figure out why our community was asking for a lot less money. And so then I said, and so as I started to kind of do this mental survey, or this kind of like LinkedIn survey of people who are negotiating and who aren't negotiating, I started to learn that it's because a lot of people feel like if they negotiate their salaries, the offer is going to be rescinded because they asked for more money. Or I started to learn that we as a community, we're taught that if we make a certain amount of money, then we are taught to be satisfied. We're taught that we should be good with that.
Right.
Where we're not taught to reach for it. Right. And so I started to say, okay, let's say you have a salary expectation, and let's say you have a range of a salary expectation. And I started to use people as my test to see if this would work. And I would say, when you give your salary expectation, see if you can give a salary expectation range of a $20,000 difference, with your highest number being your actual salary expectation, and the lowest number being the number you absolutely will not go under. Now, if your offer itself is just below the number that you'll go under, you then have to make an educated decision on whether that's close enough.
Mhm.
But your actual highest number is your salary expectation. If you fall within that range, you can't lose because you
Right.
fell within the range that you're looking for. So then I said to myself, I wonder if our community knows the difference between base salary and total comp. I wonder if they understand that if a base salary is one thing, if you know that you can negotiate your sign-on bonus and your stock option, and maybe if the company has the room, maybe an additional week of vacation, or
Mhm.
maybe an additional whatever. I started to ask questions based on just my conversations with people, and then my own research just over time after work, when I wanted to learn the differences between the different areas of tech. And
Mm.
so I started to watch Cyrus when he reached out to me for Tech is the New Black. I started to follow him a little more. I started to actually like pay attention to people who've been in the tech industry a little longer than me. And I started to also understand the difference between the salary in technical roles versus the salary in non-technical roles. And
Mm.
I started to like put all of this together with couple all of that with job search strategy. And
Mhm.
so I said to myself, if we have good job search strategy and we know how to leverage, let's say, competing offers, or if we know how to leverage the relationship building that we're supposed to be engaged in the first place, then we'll know what our worth is when we turn that into money. So when
Right.
it's the same thing as when you get into a room with a bunch of people who make more money than you, or it's the same thing as you get into a room and you're in a room with a bunch of people who know more than you. It's almost like I would sit and I would just soak up a lot of information of people who were making a certain amount of money, and then people who weren't making a certain amount of money, and trying to understand the gaps and all of that. All of that with in healthcare, I sat in on all of my interviews because I schedule all of my interviews. So
Mm.
then I started to understand what people were doing from a candidate perspective, where they were doing wrong in prepping for their interviews. And then when they would get into the interview, what they would say that wouldn't make them ideal candidates. I started to take mental notes and I would just write it down. And I would just say, okay, this is what candidates should do. This is what candidates shouldn't do. And all I did was just say, here, y'all, and be able to prep for your interviews in that way. And then it comes with also helping people be confident and speaking life into people.
Wow. So what came to my mind listening to that is, number one, I think when our community, when we go into roles, or when we go into interviews rather, we go into interviews kind of the same way we go into car buying. And I'm gonna explain what I mean by that. We go into interviews the same way we go into car buying. When we go into car buying, we don't go into car buying with leverage. We don't go into car buying most of the time with a plan or an idea in what we're looking to get, right? And the reason behind that is because most of the time our credit isn't where our credit should be, right? So we're not able to get those pre-approvals that will allow us to actually pick the car that we want. Then we go to the dealership and say, hey, I'm looking for this particular vehicle. I already have a check for it. Whoop de whoop. Let's work the rate out. This the rate that I'm absolutely going to stay at. I'm not getting anything higher than this, X, Y, and Z, right? The people who go in and buy cars just like that. But that they're not from our community. Why? Because we haven't been taught that. We come from not having good credit, so we got to kind of get whatever we get approved for is what the salesman then shows us, and then they help us pick a car, and that's how we get our cars, right? Same thing in job interviews. We come from a place in a job interview where we're obviously looking to be hired, right? So we don't want to say anything that's going to stop us from actually getting the offer. So what you said was spot on. We behave a particular certain type of way. We stay under a particular amount of money because we don't want to lose the offer. So I think re-educating our community specifically on becoming that prime candidate and going into an interview saying, I'm coming into the interview with the leverage. I'm coming in with the value, and I'm coming into this as a partnership, not as me coming to work for you. And when you look at it from that aspect, then you're able to put the pieces together and be able to ask for the things that's necessary. And we have in the comments section, Sister Shanae, we got people who's asking some questions. So I want
I want to comment on that real quick before I answer any questions, because I think it's important that, because you mentioned a very key thing. You mentioned the part about rescinding, having an offer rescinded, because the thing is, it is the fear that we want to get the offer. That's the goal. What I've also learned, though, is there are many people who don't mind declining offers because it's not good enough for them and what they're looking for. That's another level of power, like another level of power and confidence that I want us to get to. So what I did was one day I said, okay, if I'm encouraging people to learn to get so confident that they're declining offers until they get to their number, then I need to make sure I'm also doing it when somebody reaches out to me about a sponsored posting or a speaking engagement or something like that.
True.
My husband actually told me that. So after I left healthcare, the month I left healthcare, which was December 2021, my husband also started looking for another job because he didn't see any growth opportunities where he was, and we were actually working for the same company at the time.
Oh, wow.
My husband turned down 3 offers. By the time he got to his 4th offer, he was like, all right, there you go. That's better. And so, but I watched him do it with grace and poise. And I watched him say no gracefully until he got to a place where he was like, okay, no, you're going to pay me this because I've been in this field too long for me not to be in this number at this particular time in my career. So I learned that from him first. And then I started to apply that in my own like sponsored postings. Like I just did a sponsored posting not too long ago, and the company we were negotiating. And so I gave them a number I would not go under. And they said, well, we can't go here, but can you go here? I said, you know what? At this time, I don't think this is a good opportunity, but I hope you find the person you're looking for. And what they did was they turned back around and said, you know what? Never mind. We'll do it. Cool.
It be like that.
Part of the reason is because I know my worth. There's a certain number I won't go under. Now I'm gonna get you your audience if that's what you want, but you're gonna have to pay me to do the work and spend my time to actually do it.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, because again, people have not heard that enough, and it needs to be reiterated enough, really knowing your worth, because again, our people, man, we work and operate from a mindset of scarcity and survival so much that we are in the process now of being re-educated. We're in the process now of having our brains washed with a new level of knowledge and information and self-worth that allows us to now start acting different, right? Giving us having new behaviors. And it feels weird because we out of our comfort zone. So turning down money is not something that we do in the community. Like, wait a minute, we're not about to turn down no bread. Like, what you talking about? So, but that's a next level of confidence, another level of, having understanding your self-worth, which I think is extremely key. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to
key thing about that though is sometimes the reason why you're being lowball is because they know you're not going to ask for more money, because they know you're scared to ask for more money. I mean, you said it like where I'm tired of us being lowball. Like,
no, you said it. They know. They already know. And they studied this way that you study. When you were sitting in those interviews, they were studying. Okay, each of the candidates. We know the black candidates that come in, how they're going to behave. They've been checking that. Same thing with other type of candidates. So, again, we're in a new shift, right? This is shifting the culture. This information, family, is a next level shifting the culture type of knowledge that's going to get us to where we want to be. This is going to get us that financial freedom that we always been chasing. This is going to get us there, and it's going to take you getting out of your comfort zone. It's going to take you really looking in the mirror and telling yourself that you him, you her, right? Your value is there. Now go out and demand what it is that you're looking for, because the universe is obligated. Once you call on the universe, it's obligated to respond. So this is what Sister Shanae is talking about. When you go out here and you know your self-worth, then you're going to get whatever it is that you ask for. As the Bible says, you reap what you sow, right? So so that's it. As a man thinketh, this is it. So if you don't think that you're worth that, you're not gonna receive that. So that's a powerful jewel. That's a powerful jewel, man. Sister Shanae is bringing it tonight, family. So, I wanted to jump over here to the comment section. Sister Shanae, if you see me looking like this way, I'm looking at the screen so I can see the comments. And if I'm looking this way, I'm looking into the camera. Yep. So that's why you see me doing it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So we have we have some people that have some questions. I got to scroll back up. Now hold on, y'all. If y'all want to book a schedule, if you want to schedule something with Sister Shanae, you'll have to get with her on that. She'll let you know. We'll get in. She'll have an opportunity to let you know how you can go ahead and book your one-on-ones if that's what y'all want. We got that in here. All right, let's see. We got some other questions. Brother Malcolm Flex 6 TV said he been following you for a while. Love to see you on. Let's see. Mr. Feathers. Yeah, Mr. Feathers said, depending on what phase you're in the interview process. Let me go ahead and put that up on the screen. He said, depending on what phase you're in the interview process dictates the answer. First phase, give a large range. It's a question to weed you out. If you make it to the final round, tighten up the range. So Mr. Feathers mentioned that on the salary piece. And EG said, should the salary be what the market is paying? Should the salary be what the market is paying?
So that's a broad question. It's gonna result in a broad answer. So the market is going to be the average, right? But you may see different numbers because depending on the cost of living of certain states, it's going to depend on the range of that particular state. So if you're in a New York or a San Francisco or LA or even Colorado, their states may be higher, where if you're in Georgia or North Carolina or Mississippi, their states may be lower. New Jersey is higher, Philly is higher. So you're going to encounter differences in the market ranges of what you see, because it may be based on an average, and then the person's salary may be based on where they live or where the position actually is sitting.
And I've heard that. So so Sister Shanae is absolutely correct on that. It's definitely multiple factors that play into it, but your location, as she mentioned, cost of living plays a big role in the salary range. Obviously, in a place like New York, Philly, New Jersey, where the cost of living is higher, is going to dictate higher salaries versus you being somewhere in the South where the cost of living is much cheaper, is going to dictate the salary. And then on the West Coast, San Francisco salaries is through the roof, right? In LA, they through the roof because the cost of living is through the roof. But that's a beauty in working remote as well. So if Sister Shanae wants to get into that a little bit later, we could definitely talk about the beauty of working remote. Brother Malcolm Flex said, what percentage? He said, what percentage of people getting hired who have degrees compared to people who doesn't have degrees? And does experience offset the balance if you do or don't have a degree?
That's hard to put in percentage because it depends. So I want to start teaching candidates how to read job descriptions. And so
that's key.
Because the thing is, a candidate is going to look at a job description and they're going, you all, me, myself included, are going to stop at the responsibility section and say, oh, I can do that. Let me apply to the role. So what I tell as a recruiter, what I tell people is, don't even look at the responsibilities. Go straight to the qualification section to see if you qualify first. If you do, then you go back up to the responsibilities to see if you actually want to do the job. In the qualification section, most job descriptions are going to have bachelor's degree and however many years of experience in this specific discipline. And then under it or next to it, it'll say in parentheticals, or equivalent experience. The or equivalent experience language means if you don't have a degree, but your years of experience are equivalent to not having a degree plus the years of experience that the job description is asking for, then you do qualify. So not having a degree versus having a degree, it takes 4 years to get through school. So that means you have 4 years of work experience plus the years of experience that they're asking for on top of that degree. if you have the equivalency of not having a degree in years of experience, then you meet the minimum qualifications. So I am the recruiter who is never going to tell you to apply to a role that you don't meet 100% of the minimum qualifications for. I get chewed up for saying it, and I don't care, because I am not going to set you up for failure, and I'm not going to set you up for you to be applying to a million jobs that you don't qualify for you to get majority of those rejections, and then your confidence is shaken. So it doesn't necessarily mean you won't be considered, and it doesn't even mean you won't even be hired. But there is also a legal ramification on the company and the liability of the company for doing that. Now, again, I get chewed up for it. I don't really care because it's the truth. Now, when it comes to the degree versus somebody who doesn't have a degree, it depends on the hiring manager. So me as a recruiter, or whoever is serving as a recruiter, or the HR person who's representing the HR space of it and in partnership with the hiring leader, it's our job to be your advocate, to say, this person doesn't have a degree, but they do qualify for this role because they have the equivalent experience. So we have to make sure that hiring managers are not biased to people who have degrees versus people who don't. I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but I do know that you have to have a good advocate in the recruiter and the HR rep for them to tell or to prevent bad behavior from hiring leaders, because we have unconscious bias that we deal with all the time.
Right.
So you have to make sure you have a person who is willing to be like, dog, you can't do that. Right. You have to look at all of these people equally, regardless if they have a degree or not.
So let me ask you this, because what I have found in a lot of people who are coming out of tech boot camps, or getting into the tech space and they're getting into the interview phase, one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of people don't necessarily know how to interview, and being properly presenting in an interview is an issue for some people. And then the resume, because you talked about looking at the qualifications for a specific job, for a specific role that may be posted. So the question is, that's two questions. How important is your presentation in the interview to getting the role? And then the second question is, when it comes to resume and qualifications, do you have to meet all of the qualifications to qualify for the job, or can you meet some of the qualifications and be able to be a prime candidate for the job?
If you chew me up, I'm gonna answer the second part of the question first. If y'all chew me up after I say this, I'm fine, because I'm used to it. Now, again, on your resume, you have to meet all of the minimum basic qualifications that is set out by the hiring leader. The preferred or nice to have, you can meet none of them and be hired.
Okay.
Now, but those minimum qualifications are set out by the hiring leader to follow certain guidelines, compliance, to make sure every single person is looked at equally. Now, if someone is, and this is honestly what can happen, if someone is underqualified based on what is said on the job description and what's put on their resume, even if they say they did it, if it's not on their resume, if you're on your resume, you didn't do it. So if someone is underqualified on paper, what happens is if they are ultimately hired, that can look like on paper, it can look like favoritism on the candidate's part to the employer, but then it can also we've also been in situations, meaning I've talked to many recruiters who've been in these situations where if a person who's overly qualified for that role finds out that the person who was hired in that role was underqualified, the person who was overqualified can sue the company. So when they sue the company, every single person who touched that requisition is on the hook. So they have to actually deliver the parts of the process that was either fair, unfair, whatever. And so having to deal with that, nobody want to deal with that. So It's important that we make sure that compliance says we are sending people over to the hiring leaders, and we are hiring people who meet at least all of the basic minimum qualifications. Again, if it says nice to have or preferred, you do not have to meet all of those. But the basic ones, basically, You have to meet all of those minimally. Now it doesn't necessarily mean, like I said before, it doesn't necessarily mean that people who don't meet all of the basic qualifications will not be considered and then ultimately hired. It just means that if they are, and somebody decides to be a butthole or be salty and sue the company, then the company, there's a liability that the company has attached to it. So again, I get chewed up for that, which is fine. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't be hired. It just means that there's a liability attached to that. Now, to your first point, because I wrote notes, to your first point about the presentation of how you show up in your interview, it is important, whether you know it or not, it is important that your posture is a certain way. How you actually, your tone is a certain way. The kinds of questions that you actually ask at the end of your interview. I've actually written questions for people to actually ask at the end of their interview, and I've had people as recent as today go, "Yo, that diversity question that you told me to ask, they ain't know what to do with that question." And so at that point, it makes people one, look confident, not scared to ask the hard questions, but then you're also interviewing them. So if you ask hard questions and they don't want to answer your hard questions, how do you know they're going to want to take your advice or take your opinions in a meeting and for you not to be shunned? So I make people challenge the companies in the interview. So when you get on the job, you're comfortable and confident enough to be able to go into your job with expectation of you being able to operate in your level of expertise instead of having to lessen yourself or dim your light because other people don't want you to operate in your area of beast.
No, that's a very, very good point. When you talked about posture, tone, and interviewing the interviewer, that's extremely important. I learned that part coming through tech boot camp, coming through course careers and having those set of questions that you can ask them. So now when I go in the interview, I got questions for you. You're not just going railroad me with a bunch of questions. I'm going to come back with questions for you, letting you know I did my research on the company. I looked into, what you guys are doing diversity wise, what you guys are doing technology wise, what you're using, you know what I mean? All of that kind of stuff we're going to talk about in the interview. That's going to let you know that I been researching and I'm ready for this, right? So I think that's extremely, extremely important, man. So let me see, brother. Somebody else had a question. I know, Mr. Feather said he wanted to he wanted to talk about collab, and brother seemed like he really really knowledgeable in this area as well. So he wanted to throw that in there. But brother Malcolm has said,
yeah, how can we get experience if they won't truly hire us and for not having a degree? That's true. And so what I tell people, and this isn't like a factual way of doing things, but this is how I've been telling people to strategically set yourself up for success when you're looking for a job and you're trying to organize yourself. So since we're talking about tech, let's take all of the big tech companies and name them all out. Y'all can do it right now if you're taking notes. Name all of the big tech companies, put them on a piece of paper. Those are your parent companies. Right. So let's take one of those parent companies, right? And then we're going to go and trickle down to understand if that parent company has a position that fits my skill set. After I apply for that parent company, then if that parent company has a subsidiary or subsidiaries that have positions open that match my skill set, and you go company by company. As you trickle down, you'll start to find the tech startups and even the local tech companies that are near you that are in existence that you didn't know existed. And so then you ask yourself, well, maybe the competition isn't as stiff because this company is smaller and people may not know that it's actually in existence. In those companies, you may find that you may be able to get the experience that you're looking for that the medium-sized or big tech companies may not be willing to give you. And then that way you can put the consistency of the industry experience on your resume. That's only one company. You do that for every single parent company that you listed. And then after you're done with tech, go to retail, then go to healthcare, then go to manufacturing, oil and gas, utilities. You do all of those industries to then determine the strategy, of your job search, because the goal is, if I can interview for all of these companies, what if all of these companies give me these offers, and then I take all of these offers to the one company I really want to work for and leverage a higher salary because all these other companies gave me competing offers.
Wow. Hey man, listen, you on Shifting the Culture with Recruiter Cousin right now. You getting all of the gems. You understand me? Like, we really shifting the culture with this level of conversation and really putting people on, because there are a lot of people shifting into the tech space. Man, we got a lot of good feedback today from the Twitter space that we did about the conversation. We had a couple of people who had degrees in computer science that came on and was like, hey, I didn't even know that there was many of us even on Twitter that was in tech. So this space was like, I seen this pop up. I had to come in and tap in. So it was like a networking experience over there. So, man, this is opening so many doors. Brother Malcolm said, man, this is good info right here. So, a lot of people applying and have not been able to get a role. So what would be some of your, let's say, your top 3 tips when it comes to preparing your resume in order to be able to start getting interviews?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing I would say is preparing it organizationally. So it has to make sense in terms of the order of it. So at the top, you have, of course, it goes without saying, your contact information. Right. Do not put your actual address. You just need your city and state, your zip code, your email, your phone number, your LinkedIn profile link.
What? Let me take my address off of my resume. Good God Almighty.
Yeah, not your actual address.
Oh God.
And then from there, it's either your professional summary or your career objective. You don't need both. Your professional summary is mostly for when you're actually explaining what your, like, literally the summary of your skill set over your career.
Okay.
The scope, correct. Where your career objective is talking about what you have and then where you're trying to go if you're trying to pivot. So I use a career objective, and then once I got into my industry of just recruiting in general, I then changed it to a professional summary. From there, it's your skill section. So us recruiters, we're looking for the actual skills of what it is that we're looking for based on the job description. So I always tell people, have the skill set at the top, because you want to tell us what you're good at first before we even get into the nitty gritty of your actual job, your job responsibilities and your experience. After that, it's your work experience. After that, it's your education. After that, it's your licenses and certifications. After that, maybe some national organizations. After that, volunteer experience. If all of that applies to your skill set. Now, all of those categories may not apply, which is totally fine. But you take out what doesn't apply to you, and then you plug in what actually does. From there, it's when you go to the second piece of it is when you go to your job responsibilities, you have 5 to 6 strong bullet points. 6 may be pushing it. So you may want to stick to like 4 or 5. You take your first 3, or if you're going with 5 bullets, you take your first 3 to 4 bullets, and you pretty much talk about your level of expertise and quantifying all of your levels of expertise and your experience. And then your last 1 or 2 bullets should be the accomplishments based on what you put in the first 3 or 4 bullets. So then that way it tells a story, and then it narrows it down into your accomplishments without people even reading you first, because they meet your resume first. You follow that all the way down until you get to the bottom of your resume. And then I would say the third thing is, please take those pictures off of your resume, please. We don't need selfies. Take the pictures off there. It's not professional. I don't even care if it's a headshot. Take it off.
Wait a minute.
We don't like it.
People got pictures on their resume. You done seen a lot more resumes than me.
Bathroom selfies. I've seen bathroom selfies. I've seen where this girl did this and used the shower curtain as the background.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap. No bullshit.
Now, take it off. And I've also seen like professional headshots, right?
Yeah.
I think professional headshots are cool because they're professional, but still take them off, because that's going to allude to unconscious bias. Take it off.
Right. Absolutely. That makes sense. That makes a whole lot of sense, man. You don't want to give people no ammo before they get to the first call. So somebody asked, they said, how is Sister Alicia? She said that how is the best way to cover the minimum qualifications in your resume, and what is the best way to write these bullets and beat the ATS and make it all the way to the first call?
There is no such thing as beating the ATS. I say this every day.
I was getting ready to say, is that a thing, right? Is that a thing?
No, there's no such thing. But here's why people think it's like you have to beat it. When you all apply into a company, you are applying, and the software that the company is using is the applicant tracking system. When you get to a place where it says, do you have this many years of experience in this, or do you have a bachelor's degree in this? If you answer no to any of those questions, you are admitting that you don't meet the minimum qualifications. So you have now disqualified yourself because you don't meet the minimum qualifications. That's what the ATS is telling us. These people who applied, they were automatically disqualified because they said no to these required questions. If you answer yes and you still get to a place where you're in what we call our bins or categories or whatever company you work for, whatever you call it, if you get into a place where we can see your application, we're actually going through your applications ourselves, like us as people, we're actually going through it. So there are times when if you get disqualified, either the recruiter did it because you answered yes, and we looked at your resume, and what your resume says and what's on the job description is not the same thing, or the hiring manager themselves did it. So it's not a matter of beating the applicant tracking system, but it also can very much feel like that, because if all of you are applying to roles that are very common amongst the world, which are those customer service roles, those operational based roles, PM roles, customer success roles, customer account manager, sales. When you're applying to all of those roles that a lot of people in the world meet the minimum qualifications for, understand that you may be 1 in 500 to 1,000 people vying for one position. So it can be the timing that you apply to the role, because if you applied late, they could be knee deep in interviews and you just get disqualified because they're done.
Right.
So it's a number of things, but there is no such thing as beating the applicant tracking system.
So this leads me to this question, which is, how do you make yourself stand out? Because I've heard other recruiters talk about keywords. I've heard people talk about in your resume having keywords in your resume that help you stand out from other resumes and things like that. So how do you actually stand out in a pool where a role is heavily saturated, or just wanting to stand out in general so that you can get the first call?
Yeah, good question. So one, I always tell people to apply early. That's a good way to stand out. Applying early is important because you want to beat the bunch of people who are probably trying to wait for a company to post a new role on their website. So always apply early. Two, as it relates to your resume specifically, I would probably say that it is the way you explain what's on your resume as it relates to even transferable skills, because we throw that term out there like a lot. So when it comes to the transferable skills part of it, it's what is it specifically about your current skill set in your current company or your last company that's going to speak to the position that you're applying into. And so what that is going to mean is so let's say, for example, I'm a nurse, and the question is, how can I put on my resume that I'm a nurse, but I want to get into tech without tech experience, and I'm an actual nurse. Now, I've actually taken a nurse through this. What you do is what I've asked is, are you a nurse? Yes. What kind of nurse are you? I'm a travel nurse. Okay, cool. When you are in the hospital or in some type of clinic, what's the system that you use to keep track of the patient information? The answer is Epic. Okay, cool. Now Epic itself is a med tech software company that will allow you to break into tech. So then the question then is, if I look at Epic and I see Epic has training, a training position available, the question is, have you trained either new nurses or just your peer nurses on Epic because you've used different versions of Epic because you've been a traveling nurse. That means you've been in multiple hospitals. The answer is yes. Go apply to be an Epic trainer. If you get that job, you're now breaking into tech. Or even if you don't want to be, even if you've never trained anybody, you're in a space to where you were a consumer of that. So then your elevator pitch is, not only was I a consumer of it, but how can I explain I'm a consumer of this particular software. I now want to be a part of, because I'm a consumer, I want to be a part of continuously making the product or the software itself updated, because I know what I'm looking for in the software because I've used it. So it's almost like I want to make sure this particular product is the best that it can be before it even gets to the consumers, because I was once a consumer.
Right.
So it's being able to explain it and kind of flipping it in that way. And then it's also getting with a really good resume writer that I can actually recommend for y'all, because the homie Fatima is really good. So resume writer.
And this is what I'm saying, family. Listen, your brother is specializing in bringing y'all to the plug, and then when I bring y'all to the plug, it's on y'all to negotiate your salary, negotiate your business over here, so that you can get yourself situated. Because man, we in bad shape. I'm gonna just say it. We in bad shape, and we need people who got it together, who done got all the lumps and the bruises and have been through everything, to help us out. So this is what Sister Shanae is here. She's here to help us out, and we are certainly grateful and thankful for her doing that. So yes, we're going to have to tap in with you on the resume builder. Got to get with the homie Fatima on the resumes, family. So those of you all who got resumes, we're going to get you right? We're going to get you right. So listen, so we done had Sister Shanae done been on with us for about an hour now, and y'all mobbing us up in the chat right now with all these questions. And all of that. So listen. When you earlier you mentioned that there's a difference. Well, there was some difference in technical roles and non-technical role salaries. Could you go into what that looks like? A person transitioning from a non-technical sales role into a cybersecurity role. What does that look like salary wise, resume wise, and things of that nature?
Well, the salary is going to look different because of it. So, it's no secret that technical people make more money than the non-technical people.
Right.
But it's going to, in order to pivot, it's going to genuinely get to a place to where you understand, because you use cybersecurity. So let's take cybersecurity as an example. It's going to be a place where you understand the area of cybersecurity you want to go into, the function of cybersecurity you want to go into. Do you want to be a defender? Do you want to be on offense? Do you want to be red team, purple team, blue team? Like, it's really important to understand what function you want to go into. So when people say, I want to get into tech, to do a lot of that research to understand the differences in tech, because you have biotech, fintech,
medtech,
medtech,
yes,
aerospace,
ServiceNow, IT workflow,
everything,
yes.
Help desk,
right,
everything. You
product management
is absolutely, and so even marketing in tech, so market tech, prop tech, legal tech, everything is tech at this point. And so I think it's really important for people to understand the area they want to go into, and then figure out how your skill set matches with the software of that particular area.
That's really good. That's really good, because I've run into that in all of the conversations that I had with people. Hey, I want to get into tech, like you said. They have no idea specifically what it is that they want to do. And when you really start going down the tech hole, right, you start to see that it's a whole another world. Like we just mentioned, product management, finance, medical, education, logistics, right? It's so many areas that you can get into when it comes to tech, that you really got to sit down and decide, okay, what is it that you're interested in, and what is it that you're looking to accomplish when you get into the tech space, family. Look, admin tech, all of those different things like that. So it's just so many areas to get in. Oh man. So all right, family. This is your brother King Cam. This is your Shifting the Culture podcast, and I'm here with Sister Shanae, aka Recruiter Cousin. And man, she has been so gracious to us by giving us an hour of her time to come in, chop it up with us, and answer a lot of these questions that people had been thinking in their mind and haven't had nobody that had the knowledge to be able to give them a good answer on. So man, this was definitely dope. We appreciate our sister for coming through, and I appreciate all of you all who have been putting questions in the comment section. Man, checking in from the East Coast, the West Coast. Man, we certainly appreciate everybody. So the last thing, Sister Shanae, because I don't want to hold you up. We don't want to hold you up. But for those who are in tech now and are striving to get into, somebody said I woke up to this, who's striving to get into tech, what would be some of your suggestions for a person that's looking to transition? I seen somebody in the comment section that's talked about coming out of the education field into tech. And and just before she goes into that answer, I've met people that have come out of all different areas. So Siren's story just like I know Siren's story. Ex-military, used to drive Uber, jumped into tech. I interviewed a sister on my podcast early last year, I believe. Sister went to school to be a nurse, did the whole nursing thing. Now she transitioned into tech. Now she's a sales engineer, I believe. So, you have people coming from all different areas and, industries into the tech industry. What would be, some suggestions on transitioning?
I can't stress research enough. Research is really important, and building relationships and networking is also going to be important. And I'm sure that all of you hear all the time, network. Like we can just like pop lock to how many times we hear networking, right? So I do think it's important that you do network, because I've gotten testimonials from people who ask me questions all the time, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. And they'll literally say, oh, I got referred because I went to this networking event and somebody referred me for a role and I interviewed and got hired based on that networking event. And I use your resources to help me negotiate my salary or prepare for the interview and stuff like that. So I do think it's really, really important that you know how to network and do it properly.
I was going to say that.
Do it properly. Yeah. When you're on LinkedIn, a lot of people want to know, well, why am I not getting I'm sending recruiters and hiring managers or leaders of companies, message after message, and I want to know why am I not getting any responses? And so whenever somebody says that, I ask them to send me a sample of the message that they send, and I immediately can pick out why you may not get responses. So I'm going to let y'all know, if you ever send a message to a recruiter or a hiring manager and it says, I would be so grateful if you can spare 15 minutes of your time to discuss the role. We don't have time for that. It's not that we don't want to. Literally, there is not enough time in our day to spare 15 and 20 minutes to every single person that asks for a 15 to 20 minute coffee chat or conversation based on a role that you didn't even apply to. So most times people reach out and they go, oh, I would like to discuss the role before I apply. We don't have time for that. Either you want to apply to the role or you don't. If you apply, I can send you over to the hiring leader. And then from there, once we have the screening, we can then talk about the kind of the deepness of the role and the details of the role and give you a little bit more there. But I and along with other recruiters don't have the time in our day to discuss preliminarily discuss every single job requisition that we post. We just don't have time for that. So there are times when I see the wording and it'll say, do you have 10 to 15 minutes to I would like to discuss. And I'm like, nope. I'm ignoring that because I don't have time. And then it's also, what it's also is I've learned that a lot of people who either follow me or who follow others don't follow directions. And then we get cussed out for them not following directions. And so my
reading is essential, family.
I'm saying, I will post my specific roles that I'm the recruiter for. I will post it and I'll put instructions and I'll say, apply. Number 1, apply. Number 2, apply. Number 3, apply. Number 4, then reach out to me in my DM and tell me that you confirm that you actually applied. And I'll get people to reach out to me on my DM and say, I'm interested in the role that you posted. And I'll go,
But I haven't applied yet.
And they say no. And I'm like,
see, now you start off on the bad foot. Look, you start off on the wrong foot.
There are literally reasons why recruiters just stop replying to messages, because we get so many of those. And by the time we get to the people who are very like organized and prepared and they did their research, we're exhausted by the time we get to y'all. So it's just making sure that you word your messages and your outreach messages very clear on what you need from us, what your intentions are, and just sealing it. We need a small paragraph. We don't need a novel.
Yes, and a lot of us have novels. You know how people open up will say, I just want to say this one thing, or I don't have much to share. 30 minutes later, they've shared everything. They went into their problems. They done went into all of their past experiences, and it's just it's a train wreck. But also, I want to camelback off of what Sister Shanae said when she talked about the networking, right? Networking. That's the terminology that you constantly hear in business, entrepreneurship, tech industry, whatever the case may be. But it's not just that. It's really relationship building. It's connecting, right? That's what it is. You can show up to a bunch of networking events and not get any headway if you're not connecting with people and you're not building that genuine relationship that allows you to come to terms on common ground and be able to work towards what you're trying to accomplish, right? So it's not just showing up to networking events, but it's going out to events and building relationships, introducing yourself to different people, even on social media. As Sister today mentioned early in the interview, right? Early in the show, she talked about how when she was building her brand, she literally was up late at night answering DMs. If you have read the book Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V talks about how he would do the same thing on Twitter. He would literally respond back to every person in this Twitter DM and in his mentions, right? Because that's what it takes to build a community, to build authenticity, trust with your people. This is building a relationship. So the same things that you do in person with building a relationship is the same things that you do online when it comes to building a relationship and being able to expand your network through relationships. But if you're not willing and open to do those things in person or online, then it's going to be really, really difficult for you when it comes to breaking into any industry.
That's right.
And then also too, could you talk about the relationships part? Because again, people, they spend a lot of time, they get the education, they get the knowledge, they go through the courses, they do the resume thing, all that. But how important is the relationships? Just from your experience, how important is the relationships when it comes to building the brand or even getting a job?
Yeah. So when I was in law school, I would go and introduce myself to my professors, to the deans, to the assistant deans, or the dean of the law school itself. And I used to tell my homegirls, I used to say, I need the dean to know my name. It's not for recognition, but I need the dean to say, oh, that's Shanae. I know Shanae.
Mm-hmm.
So then I used to say, if I can build a character of who I am and what I operate in every single day, and my name enters a room before I do, then I've gotten to a point where I've done something right. If I can build a brand, Recruiter Cousin, and my name enters a room before I do, then I've done something right. And so that is that to me is the core foundation of relationship building, is being able to say, if Recruiter Cousin is your recruiter, or Shanae is your recruiter, you go, oh, you good. Shanae, your recruiter, oh, you fine. And I had that in healthcare, where when I was leaving, some of the HR business partners that I worked with, they would say, Shanae, we never told you this, but anytime a hiring manager would complain about their recruiter, they would look to see who the recruiter was. But when we knew we were opening up a position and you were the recruiter, we ain't had no worries, because we knew they was good. So when she said that, I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Such good work and such trusted work that you know that I'm going to make sure the job is done and you taken care of, even if I'm out of office. And I wanted to get to a point where, even in tech, where if my hiring leaders are requesting me personally to be their recruiter, I must have done something. And so I wanted to be able to keep that, because it's important that in relationship building, not only is trust important, but who you are and how you carry yourself, and the characteristic and the demeanor of your brand and your name and the way it enters a facility or a space before you do is important. And so relationship building goes along the lines of not just impressing the person who's the decision maker, but being so confident where you don't necessarily have to keep the room going or the room lit. It's being able to say, when I walk into a room, and I can confidently say this, when I walk into a room, heads turn and I get people's attention because my presence is strong. Why? Because I'm supposed to walk into a room with my head held high and my presence being
That's
strong.
right. That's
and
right.
if anybody is intimidated by that, it is not my job to nurse your
Come on.
level of insecurity.
That's right.
So it's everybody should have that confidence and that poise about them, that when they walk into a room, heads turn because it's you.
That's right.
So I genuinely believe in that kind of relationship building, to be able to say, oh, that's Shanae, she good, she all right. Or when I walk into rooms now and they go, that's recruiter cousin, which I think is weird, but they be like, that's recruiter cousin. And part of that is
You know, people be just knowing you off your online name now.
and part of it is a lot of it is not about the recognition. A lot of it is about, I want you all to say you won, not because I helped you, but because I helped you with the confidence of it and being able to walk in the light that you were destined to walk in the first place. So when you are confident and you are so sold in who you are, that relationship building and the draw and the energy will come to you. You don't have to go to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The keys, keys, gems, all of that. All of that. All right, y'all. So look, man, I'm not gonna let y'all keep me or Sister Shanae, recruiter cousin, here all night. We got questions and questions and questions. So what me and Sister Shanae are gonna do, family, what we're gonna do is we are going to potentially talk about her coming back, so that we can field some of the questions that you all did not get a chance to get answered and covered today, because again, we'll be here till 12 o'clock with y'all in these questions. But I know it's really good information. Yeah. It's really good information. And again, man, we appreciate her for coming through. So man, y'all give her a round of applause. I need y'all in the comment section, fire emojis, round of applause. Let her know that you appreciate her time. Let her know that you appreciate the information that she gave us. Man, you got people that want to do one-on-ones. They need callbacks. It's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of people in the comment section that need something from you. Sister Shanae. Oh man. So well, all right, family. So Sister Shanae, what I want you to do is could you let everybody know where they can find you on social media, where they can keep up with what you got going on, any upcoming events. Somebody actually mentioned, have you ever done a live seminar or anything like that? So, just let us know where they can
I do
stay
live all the time. So I do lives on my LinkedIn quite a bit. I do recruiter cousin pop-up question sessions all the time because I can't always get to my DM. So I literally put a Zoom up on my LinkedIn, and I'll be sitting on Zoom and I'll just answer questions. That happens randomly. I also have recruiter cousin kickbacks where I put in a bunch of I pulled together a bunch of recruiters from different walks of their professional journeys and diverse industries, so that you can get answers from different recruiters from different perspectives based on either them being agency or have they been in healthcare, they've been in retail, so on and so forth. My LinkedIn is my first and last name, Shanae Urquhart. I'll put it in the chat. Not sure if y'all can see it, but it's CHENAE. Last name is Urquhart, ERKERD. And then my Instagram is at recruiter cousin, all one word, very simple. My TikTok is also at recruiter cousin. My YouTube is at recruiter cousin consulting. I got Threads, which also at recruiter cousin. A lot of it is at recruiter cousin. But I want to answer Malcolm's question before we go. He said, why do you think Black people lack that confidence? I think we lack that confidence because we were taught to behave. And so the thing is, and I say it that way because I had a friend of mine reach out to me who is a white woman. She reached out to me and she wanted my advice on how she gave feedback to someone who works under her. And so she told me about the feedback, and she told me why. She said that the person who was under her went into a shell. And so she asked me why did I think she went into that shell? So I asked her, I said, let me ask you, the people who were giving her feedback, did any of those people look like her? She said, no. I said, when she hear the words, tone it down, that is we equate that to behave. So it's almost like we're taught that being too Black or too yourself or too whatever is too much. And so we lack the confidence because we were taught not to be confident. And it didn't just come from white folk. It came from Black people too. I had a Black leader tell me not to be myself. So, and part of that was because she comes from a different generation and she was probably told not to be herself. I don't blame her for it. But we genuinely, that's what we go up against. And so I want us to dispel that myth that we can't be ourselves, or we can't be too Black, or we can't be too whatever. We can be everything that we were called to be because God placed us on this earth for a reason, and that was to be who we are. And so I just want all of you to know and to appreciate and to love who you are and walk in that confidence, and do that in the very beginning stages of your interviews, because if you have the confidence to do it then, you have the confidence to do it on your day one, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely, family. Remember, knowledge of self breeds love for self, and that's that confidence that you need to go out and be successful, spectacular, and walk in that purpose that God has made you to walk in, family. Man, this has been such a dope conversation. This is the Shifting the Culture conversation that we strive to have each and every week. So we appreciate all of you for coming and checking out the show tonight. I want you to become a part of our community. So at the bottom of the screen, you will see where you're able to join our text community, STC Podcast, and you text that over to 888-294-2793. 888-294-2793, and you text the word STC Podcast to that number, and you'll be a part of the text community, so that you can get updates on when we're traveling, speaking engagements, special guests coming up on the show, all of those different things. You want to stay tapped in because we shifting the culture. And man, again, family, I thank you all for coming through. I'm your brother King Cam. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at Brother King Cam. And, man, I look forward to seeing you all next week. So, man, again, y'all have a blessed evening, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own.
You know. Not your average nigga, I'm a god out the hood. They can't downplay me. I came up, I'm elevated. I ain't gotta say too much for them to know I'm coming for what's mine. You know they see me in my presence, say they see how I'm coming. Young, but you not just gonna finesse me like you did my peoples. Then back when you said they was emancipated. This ain't that. Your head too big, you feeling yourself. The game wasn't fair, you had the advantage, we wasn't educated. I don't look at you people the same. Nah. Your worst nightmare, my skin tone about them chains. Yeah. Not no circus lion, son, I can't be tamed. You gon' have to kill me, pussy, Toby ain't my name. Y'all still wanna think our history started when we were slaves? What? Come on now, talk about them pyramids we made. I was chosen by that man, you know y'all just been running game. The nerve of you acting like I ain't.